Greetings and very welcome back to my humble neck of the YouTube woods. I hope everyone is well. We are gathered here today, guys, swiftly and spontaneously, I suppose. This thing kind of just happened organically from the beginning of the year. I think the Elite Older Gamer in January at some stage just brought it to my attention out of the blue that there was a free fighting game to check out, and I think it was only a couple of days before the game was actually to be released. And I got stuck into said game, and it's uploaded a few videos on said game. And Raza Is Retro left a comment on it saying, "Is this your favorite fighting game of all time at the moment?" And I didn't really think of it until he asked the question. So I thought it would be an interesting one because last year I made a top 10 favorite video game series of all time video in response to subliminal VCR. And I kind of was cheeky and did my own version of it. You were supposed to just pick your favorite video game of all time, throughout. I went for series, so my favorite video game series. And even at that, I kind of, it was a top 10, but I think I mentioned something like 18 series off the top of my head, me being me. But I felt a bit guilty and harsh because there was no fighting games in and around the top 10 or even in the mix, really. And although I am a casual fighting gamer over the years, I've dipped into a hell of a lot of them, and stuck with, a good few of them as well. Very fond memories of them. So I said it might be a nice idea to do a top 5 fighting game series, your favorites. And I will try to elaborate a wee bit on, favorite characters and why. And, I will try, even though I'm a series type man, I will try to pick a favorite title from that series as we go in the top 5, I think we should start off by doing some honorable mentions, or even beyond that, to be honest, games that I just haven't played. There are some heavy hitters that I just haven't played over the years for various reasons. One of them being the Marvel versus series of games. Obviously, they've caught my eye, particularly being a Resident Evil fan. I've seen the likes of Jill Valentine pop up in these games, and Chris Redfield, and Nemesis, and even Albert Wesker, I believe, at some stage. But for some reason, I just haven't dipped into them. The animation, all as nice as it is, there was a stage where that animation just wasn't my cup on tea. So maybe that played a part in it. But I just haven't played any of them so far. Something to look forward to, if nothing else, I suppose it's also worth a mention those platform fighters. Although they are fighting games in their own right, they're not very much like the traditional fighters that I would have grown up on. And I did play Brawlhalla, that kind of freebie, on the PlayStation at some stage. And I suppose the titan of that genre, so to speak, is Super Smash Bros, isn't it? I definitely played one of them, I think back on the Wii, with an ex-partner at the time. And it was very different to what I was used to. I actually thought early doors, I thought I was doing well because I was landing a lot of hits and combos, and I thought I was kicking ass type thing, and I'd end up losing the match. I was like, how did I lose? I was bashing you. But of course, it depends on how you fall off the platform and lose a life and so on. So I didn't play much of it, but it didn't seem like my cup on tea, and I never dabbled since, And it's interesting, all the different cameos and different characters that pop up, don't get me wrong. But it's not going to make it into this top 5 just because I didn't gravitate towards it, Some swift honorable mentions before we get into the top 5. I jotted them down here. I have a little bullet point notes to try and keep me on track and keep the video relatively swift, all flowing well. Grand Blue, Guilty Gear, Dead or Alive, Killer Instinct. That's an old school series right there, eh? Primal Rage, another oldie but goodie. Injustice, which is like a modern Mortal Kombat but with heroes and villains, isn't it really? I played those two, scratched the surface of them anyway, but obviously not enough to get into the top 5. Fairly fond of all of them, but I never played them enough to really know an awful lot of their characters or move sets or bond with any of them, you know. So one that almost made it though is like the last honorable mention that was battling, if you will, on the fringes of the top 5. Was one that John from Retro Projections suggested. I'm not sure how long ago it was now. Time is flying. But in the first season of the Shan and Raza Cup, his challenge was a kind of Joe Higashi challenge, and I think it was real about Fatal Fury or something along those lines. You know, I'm not sure, but it was a 90s kind of arcade fighter style game. You know, and was a lot of fun. Looked gorgeous, and you basically just had to go as far as you could on normal mode with Joe Higashi, and he kicked ass with him. And he beat that challenge, finished first. I think he went on to beat the game actually. Yeah, he completed it through. Whereas I think I finished second or third, but I was quite happy with that because I could only pull off basic combos with Joe. Couldn't really get his moveset down. But nonetheless, I bonded with him a wee bit over that experience because, you know, sometimes I'd be beaten in the second round or third round, and I think I got the 5 or 6 in the end. Essentially, I underestimated a lady called Blue Mary, and she emphatically ended my run. And so I kind of had fond memories just from that little challenge experience, basically within the community. And then, maybe a year later or X amount of time later, the more modern version, King of Fighters 15, I think it was, came out on the PlayStation Plus. So it was a freebie, and I was able to jump in and play a bit of that. And what I've learned is, and I think I am in the minority on this, let me know your thoughts, if it springs to mind, of course. This was more of a team-based version, so you had to pick 3 characters, and obviously I picked Joe Higashi, I picked Blue Mary, and a third guy called Kukri, I think Kukri. Didn't know this guy from Adam, but I needed a third character, you know. He looked pretty cool. He had a hood, and he was quite mysterious, and he was kind of a Sands of Time type character. I think he was kind of, you know, he could break down like Sandman. I didn't play as him very often because he was my third in the list, and more often than not, Joe and Mary managed to get the job done, you know. So I had fun with this. I played through it, went online, and I think there was a gold trophy to get 40 wins in rank mode, and I had a lot of fun doing that. I even uploaded a wee little video for memory's sake, which I often do. So yeah, because of those fun memories and experiences, that almost made it in, but not quite. But it deserves a honourable mention at least, I think. So number 5 is going to be, bursting into the top 5, is Soul Calibur. And, you know, I've dipped in and out to the Soul Calibur series. I haven't put an awful lot of time in it. But it was in that era where there was couch co-op. So I have fond memories of playing these games in person with friends, you know, and family. So the nostalgia does play a big factor in these things, let's be honest, you know. Varies from person to person, of course, but it's there. It's a variable, no doubt about it. And I always thought it was fun to play. I enjoyed all the, you know, different customizations that you could do on it. I may be wrong, but it was, in my mind's eye, it was one of the earlier ones to introduce interesting cameos in these fighting games. I remember Link from The Legend of Zelda popping in. I remember Yoda from Star Wars popping in. I remember Ezio Auditore Frenzy from Assassin's Creed fame jumping into the mix and so on. I know nowadays Mortal Kombat is infamous for introducing all iconic characters left, right, and centre, but Soul Calibur I seem to remember being there quite early. And character-wise, in terms of who I fought with Soul Calibur, it was mostly that Sophia or Sophitia character. You know, she was kind of, I think she had ties with the Greek goddess Athena. You know, she had the classic short shield and short sword and so on. Outside of that, you know, my favorite game in that series was probably the 5th one, which is quite controversial. It wasn't really well received. They'd done a 17 or 20 year kind of leap forward in the timeline, and some favourite characters were left out of the roster, and including Sophia. But I played as her daughter in that one. Had very similar moveset. I think it was Priya or something. She had twins, I believe, Alexander and Priya, and they were part of the campaign story, you know. And of course, I have to mention I played as Yoshimitsu in these games. I'm not sure if he's in all of them, but he shows up a lot in that series. And because I'm fond of the franchise that he's a part of, I played as him quite regularly too, you know. So yeah, and it's good to see Soul Calibur still going strong. I don't think I played Soul Calibur 5, and I think there's a Soul Calibur 6 out now that's doing quite well too, which is always good, you know. So yeah, Soul Calibur jumps in there, I suppose. There's a memory I have with one of my nephews in particular, with Soul Calibur, where I fought him, and basically he didn't land a hit, and I think it was one of those multiple characters battles, and his characters just got beaten and beaten and beaten, and I don't think he hit me, or didn't hit me a lot anyway. And he was like, "That's it, I'm retiring from Soul Calibur. I'm done. I'm never playing this game series again." And he stormed off, and it's just a funny memory that sticks with me, you know. So if you ever watch Finn Hines, you know, calm down, come back, you know, learn from your mistakes, live and learn, so to speak, and you'll kick me ass soon enough, you know. So yeah, I think Soul Calibur deserves to get in there at top 5 at the moment. Now, moving on to number 4, this is going to be blasphemy for a lot of people, because this is a real heavy hitter, and it's probably still the top dog, to be honest with you, in the fighting game genre at the moment. But hear me out. I will try to elaborate onto why it's not higher on my list. And this is going to be, as you've probably guessed, Street Fighter. Now, I've real fond memories of Street Fighter in the arcades back in the early to mid 90s, say, you know, when I was just a young lad, a wee lad, and having the winner stays on battles and so on, and seeing these iconic characters for the first time, and first real introduction to that genre, to be honest. I think it's safe to say, you know, Street Fighter 2 and its various versions over the years really put fighting games on the map, didn't they? Kind of, it's looked at as kind of the peak of the fighting game era, you know? Up until now, anyway. They're doing quite good now. But the reason it's not higher, long story short, is that I didn't play any of the modern ones. I didn't play Street Fighter 4, I didn't play Street Fighter 5, and Street Fighter 6 is out a good while now, 2 years or so, isn't it? And it's doing really well. It's been really well received across the globe, and as I said, is considered the main title in the genre, I think, for casuals and competitive folk alike. But I don't know why. They look great. You know, I'm hearing they played well. Street Fighter 5 didn't launch very well, apparently, looking into this. But over the course of its life cycle, the patches and, you know, as it went on, the seasons progressed. By the end of it, it was really well received and loved, apparently, which is great. And Street Fighter 4, I just think, done great from start to finish. And 6 is a similar story. So that's the main reason. And of course, I'm going to pick Street Fighter 2 as my favourite version, because it's the one I'm most familiar with and the most nostalgic for. I did get the 30th anniversary and played Street Fighter 3 and the original Street Fighter, but of course they're all the old school retro versions. So basically, fighter wise, I'm going to be quite boring. Ken, Ryu, I have a soft spot for Cammy, to be honest with you, and Sagat are probably my 4 go-to Street Fighter fighters, off the top of my head. Not very, a bit generic, to be honest with you, you know. I mean, Sagat is a beast, isn't he? You know, him and his tiger uppercuts and tiger knees and so on. And Ken and Ryu are iconic, you know. I always liked Kami's, I'm not sure even what it's called, but that kind of spinning arrow kick, you know, that kind of, I always thought that was quite cool, you know. So yeah, Street Fighter gets in at number 4. And hopefully when the stars align and the moon is full, I will, dip my toe into the more modern titles and have a great time, bit of catch up. Number 3 on the list, which is another really heavy hitter, and there's not much separating these two, to be honest with you. It's so close. But the reason I'm sticking with this one, number 3, which is going to be Mortal Kombat, is I just played an awful lot more of Mortal Kombat. I stuck with that series more, whereas I fell off with Street Fighter and didn't play any of the more recent titles. I did stick with Mortal Kombat. I didn't play the newest one, Mortal Kombat 1, and the one before that, I think, Mortal Kombat 10, I think it was. Not 100% sure. But it's a similar story to Street Fighter, as in I remember the original Mortal Kombat in the arcades, back in the Fingless arcade. That didn't last too long before it was demolished, but we still have lots of nostalgia for it nonetheless. The dark, damp, gloomy, dodgy place that it was, had a certain magic to it. So I played Mortal Kombat 1, didn't touch Mortal Kombat 2, don't know why. To this day, I still don't think I've played Mortal Kombat 2. A very, very fond memories of Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the PlayStation 1, I think. I remember, fighting the likes of Montaro and Shao Kahn just kicked my ass so much. Like beating him and seeing him, glow green and explode, and seeing those endings with the characters you were good enough to beat him with was just brilliant. Because he was just an absolute brute, wasn't he? Just bashing you with a sledgehammer and shoulder blocking you to oblivion, used to pray that he'd get arrogant and just kind of do a laugh or a cackle and taunt you or something so you could get a few free hits in, Now, I'm sure there's some beasts at the game that could just kick his ass, but I struggled with Shao Kahn so much in Mortal Kombat Trilogy, There's loads of characters in that game, loads of fatalities and animalities and babalities and all this type of stuff that was just brilliant, So if I was to pick my favourite Mortal Kombat game, Mortal Kombat Trilogy would be there, And I also stuck with their 3D era, the Deadly Alliance and the Deceptions and so on. And I probably don't like them as much as the old school ones, but I still had a lot of fun with them, to be honest. They weren't well received, I think, that era. As you did go back to the kind of old school style, didn't they? I mean, it's 3D, but it's classic kind of 2D fighting. I give credit to the Deadly Alliance cinematic that stuck with me, where Liu Kang actually gets killed off by Shang Tsung and Quan Chi. They are the Deadly Alliance. Eventually they turn on each other, of course, and it falls apart. But I was not expecting that to have Liu Kang killed off and then like a zombie Liu Kang character pop up at some stage and fight. I was like, whoa. Still a bit shocked at that. And I do remember another one where they just kind of killed everyone off. I think they just had Sindel or something like that be resurrected and chop everyone down. And I was just like, whoa. I suppose it should be expected in a game like Mortal Kombat, because it was famous for the gore and the blood and the violence and so on, So I did play the most modern Mortal Kombat I played, I think, was number 9. Don't quote me on that. It was the one where they introduced Cassie Cage and Jax's son, and they had a new generation basically. Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade had a child, and now that child had grown up to be a fighter in her own right. And I enjoyed the story mode on that, and I give Mortal Kombat a lot of casual credit, all with K's, of course, because this is Mortal Kombat we're talking about. But the crypt mode, and you could play different chess games, and it was almost like puzzle bobble Mortal Kombat style stuff, and the story mode I find that entertaining. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek and a bit silly, but I like the cutscenes and the fighting and the way it flows. I think it's safe to say Mortal Kombat has an awful lot of casual appeal. I think the casual fighting game people kind of really enjoy Mortal Kombat, and I fall into that bracket too, where I just play the story, a few of the extra modes, dip online, pick off a few trophies, and then retire. So I am out of touch, don't get me wrong, with the most modern Mortal Kombat, which I believe is mixed received. Certain elements that they put in hasn't gone down amazingly well. It's kind of a reboot of it, isn't it? I think they're having a different version of the original story type thing. But yeah, and in terms of fighters, I almost forgot, but Sub-Zero was always my favorite Mortal Kombat character. Of the Lin Kuei, of course, giving people the cold shoulder since the early 90s. Noob Saibot was always good to me too, but I think that's partially because I know he was the original Sub-Zero. His brother takes over from then on. Gets a bit messy, I think, on the last one. They kind of shuffled Sub-Zero and Scorpion up a little bit. But who else? Jade was always good to me, just in the sense of I thought the way she played was quite good. Cabal in Mortal Kombat Trilogy was another one too, So yeah, that would be my Mortal Kombat waffle for number 3. And number 2, I suppose if you're familiar with the channel and you're familiar with me, number 2, I suppose it will come as a surprise because it's been knocked off its perch relatively recently, which I really did not see coming. But number 2 is actually going to be Tekken. And I believe Tekken 8, although I haven't touched it myself, so I can't speak, changed things up that people did not appreciate. It's supposed, so that's what I'm hearing anyway. Tekken 8 isn't still, doing well. It's still up there. All of them are Mortal Kombat. The usual suspects are still very much there and relevant and have their big fan base and so on. But Tekken 8 is getting a bit of guff at the moment, I think it's fair to say. I haven't touched it. But I have so many fond memories of Tekken, generally speaking. On the PlayStation 1, it was one of the earliest games I played, so the nostalgia is big. And when you put into that, like, playing the odd game with your older brother or best friends and nephews over the years. And I've played Tekken 1, played Tekken 2, Tekken 3. I think they were all on the PlayStation 1. They just, I think Tekken 3 in particular, like, blew people away. So I pretty much played all of the Tekkens except for 8 at the moment. I got the platinum. It's up until recently, relatively recently, it's the only series where I got a platinum on. So, and this is kind of gives you a little bit into my mindset as well, is that of the Tekkens, I always really loved the Tekken tag games. So if I was to pick my favorite Tekken, it would probably be the original Tekken tag, which loads of people didn't really bond with. But I like that. I like when you throw another character into the mix and you have tag combinations, and the more variables and the more complications, the more it seems to hold my interest. And it's hit and miss with a lot of people. Some people like that traditional just 1v1 master this certain character type thing. Whereas I always liked the more team-based, tag-based elements. And of course, Tekken Tag came at a time where it was just more Tekken, wasn't it? It was just this massive roster of like pretty much every Tekken character up until that point, but you could mix and match them. Those mini games there, like I have fond memories of even the Tekken Bowl. I think it was on the PlayStation 3 I got that platinum. And it was even fun because my eldest nephew was there. Just coincidentally, he was there just playing the bowling with me. I just had to reach a certain score on the bowling, which I wasn't very good at, truth be told. And he happened to be there playing with me when the trophy popped, which was nice. And I've just endless memories of couch co-op, Tekken fun. And more often than not, I held my own and done really well in Tekken. The nephew that I mentioned there, Thomas, he beat me a few times, but an awful lot of the other nephews just couldn't get a win at all. And rather controversially, I was always of the mindset that a hollow victory is no victory at all. So I don't let people win. You mightn't try your hardest all the time, but I always make sure to play a decent game and show them respect, and try to actually take them on and have a good game with them type thing. I'm not a fan of letting people win in any way, shape, or form. Has to be a legitimate victory, because as I said, hollow victories they're not for me. You need those trials and tribulations and to get a little bit better and get a genuine win, big time. So Tekken fighters wise, Paul Phoenix is always my favorite character. I have so much love for Paul Phoenix, you know. Going back to the original Tekken where he was going toe to toe with Kazuya, you know. He hits like a truck, doesn't he? He's so many funky punches. I love his little flip, his forward X flip thing, and the double kick into the standing kick, and oh man, the sweeping elbow, which got me into so much trouble. I just love that move so much, where you just sweep them off their feet and come in with the quick elbow and catch them while they're in the air, you know. Yeah, and his moveset hasn't changed an awful lot over the years, which I like with an awful lot of the Tekken characters, you know. But yeah, Paul Phoenix is my favourite by a country mile. Nina Williams has always done well for me in Tekken. And, you know, technically speaking, she's supposed to be an Irish lass. She seems, you know, Americano to bits to me. But Nina and Anna Williams are supposed to be from the Emerald Isle, apparently. She was always a brilliant character too. Yoshimitsu was always good to me, and I liked his storyline, the way he was always kind of stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, you know. I remember that cinematic in the first game even, where he'd be galloping through the town and unleashing the money for everybody, and they were all picking it up. Paul kind of turned into a joke character as time went on. He was a genuine rival to Kazuya in the early days, and then he kind of went on to be more comic relief, you know, having a rivalry with Kuma, the big bear, and so on. But yeah, they will probably be me three. But because I put more time into Tekken, I do actually play a few more characters in there, you know. So Law was always good with his quick kicks and flicks and so on. Lee's kicks were mental too, weren't they? I enjoyed them. My friend George is brilliant with Hooarang or Howrang, or, you know, it's very hard to predict. And Brian, the cyborg lad, was a beast, wasn't he? And then, you know, more of a heavy hitting review, the old Jack models were always a bit brutal too, weren't they? Jacks and Kumas. But I would say, gun to my head, I would say Paul Phoenix, Nina Williams, and Yoshimitsu would be my three go-to Tekken fighters, you know. And hopefully Tekken 8 kind of gets well received in the end and continues to go strong. I'm sure I'll play it eventually, you know. So yeah, I suppose that answers the question, Raza's question of what's my favourite fighting game series, even though it's not a series at the moment. It's a kind of, it's the first game of its type, I suppose. And that's the one playing behind me, which is 2X KO, the rather strangely named title, which comes from when it's a tag fighter, and basically it ticks those boxes. There's more variables in the mix when it's a tag fighter for me, so I like the way the different characters can fuse with each other, you know, and mix with each other and play off each other. And there's different gaming types. There's, like, if you want to play one character, there's a selection called Juggernaut, which basically gives you more health and you just play as that one character, or Assist, which means you play as one character, you know, but the other person comes in limited. And then there's like a double assist mode, and double down, where both characters come in and do specials. And so there's an awful lot of variety in the mix there, you know. It's a controversial one, I believe. It's not resonating with everyone, and it's just strange the way I fell into this, to be honest with you, because, as I said, I heard nothing of this. I know nothing about League of Legends, which the characters are based on. I didn't know anything. I actually thought two of my younger nephews played League of Legends. Turns out one of them did, Stefan. The other one almost took offence when I said, "You played League of Legends." He was like, "Oh, I play, you know, Defense of the Ancients. How dare you get these two mixed up," you know? That was quite funny. But yeah, so I think it was January when the Elite Older Gamer basically said, "There's a free game coming out. It's a fighting game. Why not play it?" I'm like, "Yeah, sounds good." And it was 2 days before it was due to release. But of course, I didn't know that the game was like 10 years in the making and had gone through loads of different betas. And, you know, certain people in the fighting game community were well aware of this game and were boo-hooing it or cheering it on and so on, you know. But nonetheless, I hopped on and had a great time. Just a brilliant time. Like even just in the casual lobbies, they didn't have ranked mode for the first couple of, well, maybe a week when I was hopping on, you know. Um, and everything about it kind of said that I shouldn't like the game because there's no story mode. You know, there's no kind of arcade mode, even with like a beginning caption and an ending epilogue or something like that, which I usually love as a casual fighting game player. They kind of force you to go in and play people straight away online. And traditionally speaking, I'd only dabble online, play a little bit, and then retire from the game. I was never the type of player to take it seriously and rise through the ranks and do that type of thing. So this one kind of forced my hand. If I wanted to play the game more, I had to go onto casual lobbies and play different people, and then go into the ranked lobbies and play them, taking it a little bit more seriously, you know. Um, but I love the pace of the game. To me, it's really fast paced. There's two different types of specials that each character can do. Well, three because they have an ultimate. There's there's breaks and parries and furies. So there's different gauges that come into it. You know, plenty of variables to keep it active. People were disappointed about the roster to begin with. The fact that there was, I think, 11 characters at launch, but then they released Caitlyn, so brought her up to 12. I'm much more forgiving in that regard because I know that for a new title, you're making these fighters from scratch. You can't go back on the legacy characters like in the older video games, you know, the older fighters where you're bringing in these characters where the move set is all there. They just, there's minor tweaks, and then they introduce one or two or three or four new characters to the roster as it goes, you know. Um, but I didn't mind that at all because it gave you time to get used to these different characters' dynamics and what they can do because the game is so fast. There's two different camps on 2XKO, I suppose. Some people are saying it's dumbed down because there's an awful lot of, there's no half circle moves, special moves. They're usually just one button now, and they introduced this mechanic called pulse combo, which is what I play even now, which keeps these simple combos just by pressing the same button, you know, which if you have enough meter leads into a special. But I think they've found a brilliant balance to that, to be honest with you, because the casuals can go in and do some funky cool moves and enjoy themselves, but it's not optimal. You know, if you ever want to go beyond that and learn the combos yourself, there's an awful lot of incentive there because when you're stringing the combos yourself, you do a hell of a lot more damage and you can make them longer. So obviously you have to break through people's defenses less in order to win a match if you go that way. So it kind of suits everybody in my mind that somebody can go on and do some cool stuff and have fun. But at the same time, if you want to take it to the next level, there's incentive to do that, and you will have advantages, just objectively speaking, you know. And I suppose I drifted into this game not knowing anything about League of Legends, but then I heard about that Arcane series on Netflix, so I ended up watching that. Brilliant series. I highly recommend it. Arcane League of Legends. Season 1 is just brilliant, wonderful, phenomenal, to be honest with you. One of the best animated series I've ever seen, to be honest. The characters, the overarching narrative, it's gorgeous looking. Just really impressed me from start to finish, to be honest with you. Season 2 is decent too, don't get me wrong. It's not in they had to make that a lot quicker because of the popularity of season 1. And they tried to, they didn't focus on the individual characters and their individual story arcs as much. It was more of a holistic, bigger picture type thing. And I think that it suffered a wee bit from that, but still brilliant. Don't get me wrong. But season 1, absolutely must watch if you get time. And so then I had a little bit of a reference for the characters in 2XKO. There's like 4 or 5 characters that were in Arcane that are in 2XKO. The likes of Echo and Voy and Jinx and Warwick, to an extent. So it was interesting. And I liked it enough just to look up those little lore videos that I didn't know from League of Legends, Character-wise, in 2XKO, I have 3 teams at the moment, My main duo are Ari, the foxy lady herself, Darius, the Hand of Noxus, and I suppose my B team, for lack of a better word, would be Voy and Jinx. the sisters from Arcane, you know. I like the combination of them, similar to Darius and Ari. Ari's fast and magical. She can kind of spirit dash and spirit fire and portal fire and all these type of moves. Um, whereas Darius is just an absolute brute. He's just a beast with an axe, you know. So he's in your face and he's strong, and she's more fast and agile. And it's a similar thing with Voy and Jinx. Voy is a gauntlet puncher. You know, she gets in your face, does vicious combos that way, and Jinx is more of a zoner. She stays away and uses projectiles for the most part. She's a bit of a mix, you know, a bit of a mad mix. And then my third team is Alawi and Echo. So I think they're a pretty good combination too. Echo's one of the best characters in the game. Mechanically speaking, he's so hard to deal with, you know, even for someone like me that isn't very good with him, he still causes trouble, you know. And Alawi is similar to Darius, as in she's just a powerhouse. She hits like a truck. So yeah, this is an interesting video that for the longest time Tekken has been my favourite fighting game series. And then this new one comes out of nowhere and topples it from its top spot. And, you know, it's mainly on merit because I think I've clocked 80 plus hours at the moment into this casually, which is just crazy. You know, I don't think I've ever put 80 plus hours into any fighting game, ever. And it doesn't really show any signs of slowing down, you know. If I'm free and able, I think I'll stick with this and see how the seasons progress. And there's new characters coming out, I think April 7th, don't quote me on it. But I think there's at least one new character coming out relatively soon. And they've announced another one to come after that and so on. So there will be content trickling out. And I'd highly recommend it, particularly because it's free. You know, an awful lot of people are ditching on it, saying that the cosmetics and the different packages are too expensive and so on and so forth. And I understand that. But I'm a very disciplined kind of individual. I don't have the urge to buy these things, particularly if it's just aesthetics and superficial stuff. To me, I'm just saying they released a free game and it's quality. I've put 80 hours into a really solid, beautiful looking fighting game, tag fighter game. As far as I'm concerned, I was like, that's brilliant. That's just mad that it's free, you know. So I'm on the other end of the spectrum saying, Jesus, how is a game of this quality free in the first place, you know? And in terms of unlocking you know, you have to unlock characters with your daily quests and weekly quests. You get these little point system, and it doesn't take long at all. If you just drip on for half an hour, 25 minutes a day, you'll fly through unlocking the characters and so on, you know. So yeah, guys, that is nearly 40 minutes in, way longer than I expected it to be, truth be told. But yeah, 2XKO has just blown up the ranks at the moment on my favourite fighting game series. I definitely recommend giving it a try anyway. I can see how it's not for everyone. It might be a bit too fast, you know, dealing with the different combinations and so on. But I would say stick with it, because although initially it can be a little bit overwhelming, once you get used to what each character can do, you can predict most of it. At the moment, I'm on a journey to try and make it to Emerald rank. I think I've been hovering around for about a month now in the various Platinum ranks. And I can't get my head around the ranking system. It's quite funny. You know, I'll win one and it'll give me like 11 points, you know, and then I'll win a couple of matches after that and they're giving me like 3 points and 4 points and 2 points and just really minuscule stuff. And then I'll lose 2 and I'll lose like 15 or 13 on them and I'll be right back down, you know. You can go on these streaks where you're nearly closing in on your goal and then you lose 4 in a row or something like that, and all of a sudden you're just, it's 2 steps forward, 7 steps back from time to time with it, you know. But that's my goal at the moment. I would love to reach Emerald rank. I just think it's quite fitting. Initially, I wanted just to get the Platinum, but now I'm playing it enough now where it would be really cool to get the Emerald. And I'm kind of enjoying playing as a Pulse player, a casual Pulse player, because everyone recommends not using the Pulse combos past a certain rank, you know. But I'm having fun with it. And to be honest with you, I can't be arsed. I'm not one of those that goes in and learns the combos in the even though you should, I suppose. But on any fighting game, I just kind of wing it and I watch what people do and I just play around with it. I was never one to go into the actual training zones and learn the combos and the timings and stuff like that. Doesn't mean to say that I'd never do that, but I just never really found that overly fun, and I haven't done it with this game either. I've just kind of jumped in. I practice in the casual lobbies. I just go in and try out new things in casual matches, and then take the ranked matches marginally more serious. I'm always relaxed regardless, you know. And it's really nice when you come across someone of a similar mind that will just play. You know, you go into a casual lobby and you'll just play like 10 or 15 matches and win, lose or draw. You're both having a good time and enjoying it. And then afterwards it's good game, man. And, you know, fair play. And I liked your combos. And that's always nice and refreshing, because more often than not, you get people kind of leaving lobbies or not saying so nice things about somebody's tactics or so on and so forth, you know. It's always a wee bit cringy, isn't it? But yeah, so that's the gist of this video, guys. It's a top 5 favorite fighting game video of all time, or series, I should say. Please feel free to do a video response if you want to, particularly for the likes of Raza and the gang, who are much more privy, they're much more knowledgeable on fighting games, and the genre itself will be higher up their video gaming, in the upper echelons of their video game genres, you know, so to speak. So guys, I shall love yous and leave yous. Make sure you look after yourselves and each other. Be kind to all kinds, and slán a bhaile.